I want to welcome to the program a really interesting guy. I know you've heard of him before. He's been fighting the conservative cause for a long time now. Congressman Darrell Issa of California. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to be seen by you and heard by your viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, when I think of you, your name is like sort of inextricably tied to government oversight for me. You spent so many years leading that panel and basically uncovering every terrible thing that Democrats were up to within the bowels of the bureaucracies, wherever they may be. You were so good at it. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of when I see you.
Well, but fighting the bureaucracy is the most important part of the job. You know, our founding fathers, they allocated a certain amount of money to the president to execute faithfully the Constitution. But they also created each and every one of these bureaucrats, authorized them with the help of the Senate, confirmed all these people. And, and you look and go, with $4 or $5 trillion directly at stake and a $24 trillion economy at stake, just maybe finding out why less than 1 out of 4 FDA people are currently at work. But you can't fix the problem of formula being available months after they shut it down. You go, well, wait a second, just maybe the executive branch does need a little help. And I think that's where the legitimate role of oversight is underdone.
Yeah.
Underdone. Neither Republican nor Democrats have ever done enough genuine oversight of the bureaucracy. And if I had my way, we would dramatically increase that. Candidly, probably reduce a lot of the other stuff we do, but watching out not just for the money that's spent, but for the real rights of people that get infringed on. I remember Lois Lerner. And
oh man, that was the one. I mean, that was the one I was so tuned into. Maybe those are the years that make the lasting imprint on me. But that was one of the most egregious things I've ever seen.
Well, and she'd been a bad actor for decades and gotten away.
Yeah.
If you ever want to have some fun, you go back to the 1990s and find her as the deputy Federal Election Commission lawyer. And she's sitting there as they're explaining why it was okay to prosecute the Republicans in Florida for taking money from a foreigner, but not the Democrats for taking money from the same formula or foreigner. They literally could look at you in a straight face and say, well, we only have limited resources to execute our obligation.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, so now as you look at the landscape, obviously, look, we're in the midst of election season. It started, as we saw Tuesday night, a lot of excitement out there. Republicans are turning out in droves, and I think the likely
and too close to call.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, this is what it's all about. But the most important part is Republicans are basically in record turnout everywhere we've had a contest, which tells me the likelihood of you all finding yourselves in the majority is pretty high. If that is the case, I know you're not totally responsible for all of this anymore, but if you're sort of looking out at the landscape and trying to see what you think are the top oversight priorities in the Biden administration, what would they be?
Well, for our branch of government, to be honest, we've got to sweep the floor from the trillions of dollars of special money that was given out over the last couple of years.
Yeah, these are the COVID funds you're talking about.
Oh, well, COVID and indirect. I'd love to look at just COVID, but if you're the Financial Services Committee and you had until 4 weeks ago the Federal Reserve buying mortgage-backed securities in order to stimulate the economy, well, we got to an 8% inflation, and then they say they're going to fight inflation, or running up the balance sheet of the Fed, which is about $60 billion of net worth, but their balance sheet is $9 trillion. Name a bank can do that kind of leverage. So there's plenty of places for each committee. So the answer, as I see it, is every single committee of the Congress needs to have a significant subcommittee whose job it is to do oversight. There's a specific committee, the Oversight Committee in the House, that could help coordinate, but it has to coordinate with every single committee. Ways and Means on taxes, including income tax, obviously the doling out of aid that's going on today. You know, it's easier to get baby formula at the Mexican border if you come over illegally than it is to get it at Walmart in Detroit.
That's nuts. Absolutely crazy. Well, so one of the things I'm told that you have some expertise on, Mr. Issa, is the Hunter Biden laptop, which is, as you might imagine, of keen interest to our listeners for a variety of reasons. It all started obviously with the news that it existed, and it was summarily banned of conversation by social media and everywhere else. And then now we've kind of gotten a look under the hood. But my understanding is you know more than most of us about this thing.
Well, I know more than I want to know. There are pictures there that I will never get my virginity back.
You can't unsee that stuff.
This is a deeply disturbed drug addict, and separately a rather perverse sense of sex, apparently. And all of that is on there. So in addition to the hundreds of thousands of dollars of deals going between people, the millions of dollars of revenue coming in, his shock that he had made millions of dollars from his own tax people, the $5 million that apparently he hid from the IRS, and they're now negotiating, instead of prosecuting him, some sort of a bargain to let him off the hook. In addition to all of that that's in there, yes, he's got an awful lot of pornography. He's got a lot of. He's got a lot of pictures. He's got a lot of pictures with women who clearly didn't know they were being photographed or videoed.
Oh.
There's a lot of that. Here's what makes it important. It's not what's there. I'm a libertarian. What somebody does is their own business. But this guy was committing crimes. He was taking pictures of his cocaine stashes. He has FBI phone numbers of lots of high-ranking people he was having correspondence with. Well, at the same time, he's cutting deals with foreign governments and lobbying his own father in violation of the law. And you know what? The FBI and the Secret Service had to know it. So law enforcement at the highest level knew what he was doing and was actually covering up for him, allowing him to get away with things. You know, this term that no one is above the law, no one is above the law if the Attorney General and the agencies that work for the Attorney General refuse to enforce the law. That's where we are right now. They knew it. The FBI had this laptop and actually was part of the cover-up, because when the New York Post reported it and it got shut down, the FBI knew this was real, and they'd had it for 2 years. So
that's so wild to me, because then also immediately afterward, you had this letter come out from all these quote unquote intel experts, right? And it was all the names that we've recognized over the last few years, that the Russiagate and everything else, also saying that it has the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. And what you're saying here is that the intel agencies themselves likely knew that that was not the case.
Absolutely. People knew, and the ones who said it, you know, one of the things that happens if you were to quote me or you were to introduce me, you'd say Congressman Darrell Issa, Republican of California. If you talk about Joe Scarborough, even though it no longer applies, you still say, you know, former Republican congressman from Florida. For some reason, these left-wing Democrats who served in these administrations and were beholden mostly to Obama, somehow they get a pass from being called anything other than, quote, experts as their signatures were gathered. And they're not accountable for the fact they were wrong. But let's remember, we're now seeing, in real time, we're seeing that the FBI took about 1 day in the Durham case. Now the prosecution is actually in court. The FBI knew within about 1 day that, you know, Hillary Clinton's attorney lied.
Yeah.
Presented something that was false. They knew within a matter of a few months that, in fact, he had actually charged them for the service of going in and saying, "I'm just here as a concerned citizen to report this." His only concern was that it be billable.
And, right. And it took until Durham sort of presented all these facts in concert before anybody wanted to do anything about it, right?
Yeah. Meantime, you know, look, President Donald J. Trump is not a sympathetic character. He never will be. You know, he was born with a silver spoon. He's got an ego bigger than the state of Wyoming, much bigger. But Yeah, I wonder how I picked Wyoming.
Yeah,
but,
right.
the
Freudian slip there.
The fact is, leave the sympathy aside. They falsely accused this man and his campaign and then hounded him for his entire presidency and somehow are still doing it with impunity. You know, the interesting thing is that I guess the trial began 5 years to the day from the point of that false statement. When did we ever lose track of justice delayed is justice denied? Mm-hmm. President Trump deserved to be fairly vindicated in weeks or months, not in half a decade.
No, totally right. And sort of scuttled much of his agenda because he had to spend so much of his political capital fighting something that frankly didn't exist.
Let me tell you something worse. And this, you know, I've gotten to know President Trump over the years pretty well. The effect on somebody's psyche, the idea that people are against you, that there's a conspiracy, that people within the government will lie, cheat, and steal, that nothing is beyond them, including stealing an election. That idea didn't happen in one day, and President Trump didn't come into government service with that attitude. That occurred over years of false information. And that, quite frankly, has more to do with how Donald Trump today tends to feel like everyone's out to get him on the other side, and they'll lie, cheat, steal, because they will.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one thing to be paranoid, but it's another to have it actually happen. Right. It's true. It's true. And with the benefit of hindsight, he can see exactly how it is that he handled much of what he handled, which looked defensive because frankly, he was put in that situation.
Well, let's think about this. And this is one that I take both pride and a little bit of grumbling about. You know, when initially they made this accusation that there was legitimacy to this accusation about some form of backdoor with Russia, and there needed to be an investigation. And as we both all know, Attorney General Sessions had been on the campaign, and there was some question about whether he was forthcoming in all his meetings with Russians. And I was asked on none other than Bill Maher, you know, whether he should recuse himself. And knowing that the appearance of a conflict is enough to recuse yourself, I said, sure, he should appoint an independent prosecutor to investigate it, and he should recuse himself and allow someone to oversee that so there wouldn't be the appearance. Bill Maher was thrilled. But you know, if the honest truth had come out in a short period of time, that would have all gone away. There wouldn't even be that investigation or now this follow-on investigation. The reason these investigations go on 5 years later is because the people who knew it was a lie didn't come forward in the days that they should have. Yeah. And that question never would have been asked. As a matter of fact, Bill Maher would have had laughables about the Russian deal, like, oh yeah, they're collusion. Trump managed to get Hillary Clinton's lawyer to do his dirty work by going to the Russians.
Right.
Oh, that's got to be perfect. You know, Trump doesn't even pay for his own lawyer. He gets it from Hillary Clinton. Now, that's bipartisan. You could hear the humor if the truth had been known, but it wasn't.
No, it was deliberately hidden. You're absolutely right. I got to ask you a process question, right? So
sure.
Let's go back to the Hunter laptop.
I'll switch to coffee from my Coke Zero. I just want you to know that I caffeinated up for this.
You were well caffeinated for the variety program. Well, you know, I mean, like we do a lot of recording after 5 p.m. too, so you can draw your own conclusions about that. But here's my question. So when staff, do you have staff go through the Hunter Biden laptop first?
I had one person make sure that we had a full and complete, and found some hidden files, and I have a cyber guy who helped with that. It took a couple of go rounds because this had been pulled off a Mac, and had been pulled off a Mac, including all of those system files that are part of it. So I had some help there. After that, I have to be honest, it didn't take long to just go by category, picture.
Here's movie. I'm trying to get at the poor staff member who needs to come in and say, Congress.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, but you're going to have to take a look at this file.
Well, in fairness, the first staff member said, "You don't want to see it." Okay. The second staff member said, "I'll never get it out of my brain."
At which point you're like, okay, hand it over.
at which point they showed me the more benign stuff. And I have to be honest, there are some things I haven't seen because I've been warned that I'm too young.
I mean, you just can't make it up. You can't make it. This business is stranger than fiction.
You can't make up that the text, for example, from the then Vice President of the United States saying, "Hunter, where are you? Why aren't you answering? We talk every day. Where are you?" That's because drugged out. He was strung out and he wasn't responding.
He's probably concerned.
That was going on at a time in which the vice president was one of the most powerful people in the world. He was handling both Ukraine and China on behalf of President Obama. He, in fact, now was a deeply concerned father on his drug addict son. And you want to talk about vulnerability? There was vulnerability there. And so a lot of that is where the Secret Service and the FBI and Department of Justice, they didn't meet their requirement to deal with this. And as a result, the vice president was in a very compromised position.
Yeah. And I think that's the big news out of that. Everybody sort of blows through it, but that's it. When you have the second in command that's basically totally compromised, it is a very, very tough look for the United States.
Exactly. And look, for those who are junkies on politics and they watch the green chairs of Britain, where the loyal opposition has a whack at the prime minister every week and asks them these questions, and the prime minister must answer. And it's quite good theater, but it also is there for a reason. It's not that I'm a partisan and I want to go after this particular president. It's that inherently the loyal opposition is best positioned to look for those mistakes and help point them out. The majority needs to participate in helping fix the problems, even if they weren't as motivated. And that's what I've learned under both Republican and Democratic presidents, Republican and Democrat Congresses, is it's my job to be the watchdog, but it's the majority's job to be sensitive to fixing problems. Right now, the majority is ignoring a president who has all of this and no answers, including where's Hunter Biden? And, don't you have anything to answer for, including what's going on? Who's handling the IRS dealing with somebody who lied about and hid $5 million or more of income? That's normally the kind of crime that you find you get in that cell that still has the carvings from Al Capone there. I know $5 million isn't a lot of money to you, but to some of us, that's real dollars.
Look at you coming at me with that.
Hey, I'm not the one wearing a designer T-shirt. You are.
That's good. You know what? I can take some of that. That's good for me. So here's my last question on the whole Hunter piece. Do you feel like they've adequately answered or answered at all allegations about whether or not in a post-president's vice presidency situation that they were in fact in business together? That there was a business component to Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's relationship?
We've found a clear business connection. You can't put your son on Air Force Two and take him in to a country where you and he are both having meetings for you for the government, him for his financial benefit. You can't call that anything other than a business deal. Now, whether the silent partner ever got any money back, we may never know. Mm-hmm. But, for a father to want to have his thrown out of the academy, lost his commission, drug difficult child, to have him have enough money to be, quote, happy and stable, that's a partnership. So, I'm not looking for the partnership at this moment of how much money went between them. Yes, that'd be a crime, but it's a crime to put your son onto an airplane and help him get millions of dollars on behalf of the American, people's best interest. It's a crime even if you didn't get any money, to basically get the prosecutor going after the business partners of your son gotten rid of, and using $500 million of aid as an excuse if you don't get the aid unless you get rid of this prosecutor. So we certainly have, we don't just have the smoking gun. We've got the bullets, we've got the cartridges. Yes, some people are going to look for the dollar transfers. I've learned, sometimes you don't need to have that. I always say that, when they said, well, why are you investigating Benghazi? It's like, well, because we know people are dead.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes that's enough to not worry about all the other details. You go in there and say, how do we keep this from happening in the future?
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a perfect bow to that. Listen, I got to get to 3 questions and let you get on with your day. But these things are pretty serious, Mr. Issa. These are not things that we just throw away. These are how we judge your character. And so the first question is, if you can plan your last meal on Earth, what would it be?
Well, it would have to be some really good Wagyu steak, probably, since I'm not worried about my diet.
Right.
It's a couple of pounds at, $80 an ounce. So,
that feels right.
About my savings. A little bit of caviar on the side.
I knew you were going to go. I almost previewed this by saying, where do we put the caviar?
Okay, but understand, there are some truffles that they raise the pigs for years and they only get them every few years. So there are some truffles that can make that steak beyond compare. So I'm going to go for those. And then, because I thought you might ask this, okay, the 1947 French wine, the Cheval Blanc, okay, yeah, it's $160,000 a bottle. There aren't too many bottles, but I only need one.
Yeah, at this point, you only need one.
You only need one. So, and then, by the way, if I were on death row, I definitely would make that request. And you know what? They don't have to execute me until they find these things.
The oversight bill on that one would be pretty high.
You only live once.
I feel like you put your finger on a very important part that has eluded most of our guests, which everybody thinks about, what actually, like, what do you like to taste and, what would it be? But you have taken this a step farther. Yes, that's part of it. What's the biggest bill I can rack up on my final day?
When I was a kid, they actually had a show where they gave, mostly women, but I think it might even been co-ed sometimes, they gave them a shopping cart and so many minutes to run around, and the winner was the one that had the most dollars at checkout in the cart.
I remember the show.
You got to think about density and how many pieces and where they are.
Was it Supermarket Sweep or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, the fact is, this afternoon, okay, Robert Mondavi has a deal with the Rothschilds. This is much less expensive and it'll give you the same hangover. But remember, I wasn't planning on a hangover afterwards regardless.
No, you're not, because you're gone. It's perfect. That is an excellent answer. Okay, so this next one I'm really interested for you. If you never got into public service at all, right? No politics, nothing, no elected service. You have this great big wide hole in your life, and you could fill it with any blue sky thing that you come up with. What would it be?
Well, based on when I came into government, assuming that what I'd done up until then, I did, but assuming that I sold my company, instead of coming to government, what was I going to do? There's no question at all. The companies that were being begun, the entrepreneurs, the people I like and respect, including Elon Musk, that were just getting going in 2000, as the tech wreck hit, I've got to tell you, I'd have been deeply involved, and the people I like, who I respect, there were so many of them, I would just be happily, not necessarily, I'd be the conservative in Silicon Valley, because there were so many opportunities to increase the quality of life, to manufacture things that made the world safer. And so whether it's a rocket that costs a quarter as much and means space travel is now available to everyone, a financial trading system that is more efficient and more convenient, or quite frankly, the kind of freedom to express yourself on a global basis without fear of being censored by somebody in a room that you don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to be involved in each one of those. And I will tell you one of the other ones that people miss. I would love to have been part of the renaissance of fuel in this country, oil and natural gas. Oh, yeah. Those industries recreating, especially natural gas, where we're getting rid of coal. I hate the term clean coal, to be honest. I grew up in Cleveland. It wasn't clean. The fact is, natural gas, fabulous, and we now have an abundance of it. These have all been exciting things that have gone on while I've been in government, trying to keep government from standing in the way of these kinds of progress. So, I've been the guy sticking it to the man, but I've also been the man. If I were out in business, I'd be trying to stop the government. Well, in fact, having them try to stop me, because they always seem to hit the nail that it stands up. And the nail that stands up, as Steve Jobs said so well, he said, these are the crazy ones. The crazy ones have changed the world.
Yeah, no question about it. And what's so fascinating is you may have been the only conservative when you got there, if that was your different path in life. But all those folks around that 2000 mark, all of a sudden they're starting to look at things a little differently, right? I mean, we had David Sachs on the program last week. Boy, he sounds pretty Republican to me. And we haven't had Elon, but we talked a lot about him. Boy, it sounds like he's going to vote Republican for the first time. You never know, right? These things can change.
You know what? You should ask Brad Smith over at Microsoft. Good guy, thoughtful, brilliant attorney. There's a lot of people that aren't Disney executives.
Yeah, right. Right. That is a very good point. All right, so here's your third question. And this is our esoteric piece. We think that everybody's motivated by one of two things. It's either the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. Thrill of victory people are always the sunny optimist, sort of charging up the hill, trying to get the next accomplishment. The agony of defeat person is every accomplishment they've ever had in life, it lasts like 5 seconds. Every defeat they've ever had, they carry with them for a lifetime, and they work harder to try to vow to never have it happen to them again. They don't want the embarrassment. It's like the Michael Jordan type figure, right? I don't know if you've watched that miniseries, but that's like a perfect example of an agony of defeat guy. Where do you find yourself?
I'm a thrill of victory guy, but let me explain. Every time I've had the agony of defeat, including the one election I lost in 1998 for the U.S. Senate, the primary. Okay, I've won 20 since then. You enjoy your victories and you learn from your defeats. So if you ask, what do I learn from? The answer is my mistakes, my defeats, the things I've done wrong. What do I enjoy? I thoroughly enjoy every day looking at how blessed I am that time and time again, serendipity, fate, a little bit of extra hard work have allowed me to get things done, things that I'm happy and proud about. Now there are some times you just look and say, I'd forgotten about that. And I'll give you that one. I'm waiting to be confirmed in the Trump administration. And Bob Menendez, Senator Menendez, as the guardian at the gate to keep corrupt people from getting into government, decides that I'm not qualified because when I was 18, I had an ID card in the Army that said I was 21.
If ever you have one of those, you're surely not qualified. Makes practically all of our audience, by the way.
But that did make it clear that I violated a law. Do you know that's falsifying a government document if you've got an ID that says you're a different age. So
the old fake ID.
You don't even know about the lesson. I would have learned a lot more from that lesson if I'd known that 40 years later it was going to be used against me. But now I know. And so I'm very careful in filling out any form to make sure I get that age just right.
Imagine with a straight face trying to tell a guy of your caliber you're not qualified because you tried to get into a bar when you were 19 years old. I mean, that's just incredible.
Well, the
Incredible.
worst part is I got into the bar before they discovered it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, then you're stuck. Listen, this has been a blast. Stay in touch. Congressman Darrell Issa, thanks for all that you do and continue to do, and keep us updated. Whenever there's anything that's interesting that you're working on, we'd love to hear about it.
Okay, well, I thank you. And even though your listeners can't get it, the Ronald Reagan original behind you thanks you.
It's an original. You know what? We may post that. We might post that. That's a good look. I love that. All right, Darrell Issa, thanks so much.
Thank you.